Football is now back, and I think we have to talk about the top four chances of Chelsea after talking about them from the title race. But the main thing is their project actually working? Are they going to be this sort of big success? We've talked about City's era, United's era in the past. Will it be Chelsea's era in the coming future? Jordan, we've got to start with you in this. I think you need to probably explain to some people what is Chelsea's project at the moment, because at the moment, to me, it seems pass it to Palmer and that's about it. So is there actually other stuff going on?
So yeah, that is definitely a good question. I think until the most recent months, I think every Chelsea fan has been asking that question, to be honest. What is the Chelsea project? But I think in the last few months, we've had, as we said, a good start to the season. I think the project is becoming a little bit more clear now. It's to build a young, exciting, attacking squad of typically younger players with potential on, as we've said, long contracts. We can get into that a bit, but ultimately to build one of the best sides in the world, not necessarily right now, but in 3, 4, 5 years' time. That to me feels like the project. That would be my kind of 2-line summary. Whether or not that's the case, I don't know, but that's the direction I feel like we're moving in.
So obviously you mentioned the age young. If you looked at, there's a recent sort of stat that went round, average age of squads. Chelsea's was the lowest of age of 23 years and 228 days, which was over 2 days more than the second lowest, which I believe was Bournemouth.
Yeah.
So it definitely shows that you are buying young players. But does that mean that's going to work in the future? Just because you've bought the young players doesn't mean they're all going to become superstars. So is there that sort of element of a big risk on that, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is a risk. And look, Reece will say it in a minute when his connection improves, but you don't win anything with kids at the end of the day. It's an age-old saying, and to be fair, it's pretty much been proven true. But I still think we're early in this project, and I know like we've had a rough couple of years. The comparison I make, and again, look, our season could end up, all going tits up, and it could end badly. But the start we've made, you look at, Arsenal, what I describe as their banter era, lasted 7-8 years, where they were just complete mockery of English football. You look at Man United at the moment, really, really struggling, and they have been for I don't know the exact years, but you could argue a decade now. Yes, they've got the odd trophies, and that's why Ten Hag's there. But United have really, really struggled. So I think when you compare it, it's would you rather have obviously you'd rather have a squad that just wins trophies straight away. We saw that under Abramovich, but I'd rather a team be young and exciting, showing signs of potential. And if we can keep this current start to the season up and end up getting top 4 and pushing higher, then as a fan, I think that's what you want to see. You want to see attacking football. You want to see young, exciting players. It's almost too early to say whether that's the right strategy, because it is unproven. That's the issue at the moment.
Yeah. Reece, what do you make of sort of Chelsea's buying the young players? Does it actually matter for the project? And do you think the project's working?
I think it does matter. I think you can't just buy, 32, 33-year-olds, because that's a very short-term thing, isn't it? And, with a young player, you have that area of, growth. With these 8-year contracts they've offered them, they've got that time to do that. You need a mix of experience in there, don't get me wrong, a couple of older players. But yeah, I mean, I've been critical and I've praised this project in a number of ways. You'd argue, do they have resale value, many of them players? Probably not. So if it goes wrong, where they're going to get money for them? But in the other sense of it, I look at a project where they can play 3 different teams across 3 different competitions, or 4 when the FA Cup comes in, which is good. Keeps them fit, keeps them fresh, keeps everybody, fighting on the right fronts. I do like it. It's the squad is bigger, so it really does does have that benefit. But yeah, it takes time. It takes time. If you want people to coaching takes time. You can't just expect it to be overnight, and these players will learn as they go along. And we've seen a lot of positives. They've only lost one league game, and that was to a team that they shouldn't beat. So yeah, you're going to expect bumps in the way along the way, but I think it's working so far.
See, I think with your point there, Reece, where you're saying they're playing in 4 different competitions, or will be when the FA Cup comes in, and play 4 different squads. I think that only works because you're in that Chelsea are in the Conference League. If Chelsea were in the Champions League, they cannot afford to play the same squad that they are playing in this Conference League, because they've not even got Palmer in the whole squad like signed up for it, so he's not eligible to play. There's no way if you were playing in the Champions League that Palmer would not be in your squad, even starting them games for it. So I think at the moment it's fine. But when you start playing the big competitions that Chelsea hopefully want to be getting top 4 at least this season, that doesn't work, I don't think. And I think that comes into a problem. It's fine to do it in the FA Cup and the League Cup because they mean less than the League and the Champions League. So I think there can be a big problem of it. But and also, sorry, just before you come in, is it working? Well, at the moment, you've finished 12th and 6th, and you haven't won a trophy. So at the moment, I don't think you can say it's working because you've also spent like nearly $1 billion or just over $1 billion, I believe it is. So to say it's working yet is, I think, way too early. Doesn't mean it can't work, but it is such a massive risk because there's no guarantees that it will work either. Whereas if you used that money, the $1 billion, you could have built a very good squad of players who are ready now, who are 25, 26, for example. So that's the massive risk I think there is in this Chelsea project.
Yeah, I think to be honest, that's a really good point. And for me, I think there is a lot of positive. It's definitely, you can't say it's worked. Like obviously it's a long-term game at the end of the day, and we've not won anything. So, but I do think there's so much optimism, and you can, again, it's I guess subject to the start of the season we've had, but you can start to see a lot of positives, but also for the long term. Like Palmer's prime example, £40 million. Many people looked at that transfer and went, "What are you doing?" And he's already on form, become literally one of the best players in the world, doing ridiculous things, breaking all these records, something that no one ever thought possible. And already, for all the bad signings we've made, we bought him for 40 million. He's, what's his price right now? Ridiculous. I don't know what it would be, but we can have a debate another time. But
I'll just add to that point where I've seen the rumours, which I believe are total rubbish. City are looking at buying back Cole Palmer, and the figures are being mentioned of 150 million. So that's kind of, you would have made profit on him, but is he the only one in terms of that star value? Because like Reece said, I don't think you get resale value out of nearly anyone else.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the mistakes that we've made are the silly money transfers. So I can justify a lot of the other transfers other than the 100 mil on Enzo. But I don't think we make that same signing now. As in, I feel like the ownership strategy has changed slightly from when we paid 100 mil for Enzo. I appreciate it's not been that long, but I don't see us doing that again, which might be really naive. But the Caicedo one again, sorry, go on, Reece. What were you saying?
This is where your academy comes in handy because you're making your money there. Who was it? Was it Angelo or somebody you loaned out and then sold him instantly for 5-6 million profit?
Yeah,
that's a very clever method to make, because any of those players that start that don't make the grade, you've already made the money back with other players. So there's that, which I think is a very effective business model. But are you going to eventually run out of young players who want to join the academy because they're going to be like, well, what's the point? I'm just going to get loaned out and sold somewhere else. So yeah, fine balancing act.
There's definitely been mistakes as well, like the whole Gallagher situation. I still don't agree with, regardless of just because we've started winning games, it doesn't mean the way that was done was right. But yeah, other than 100 mil midfielders, which again, I do think, Caicedo's, I'll be honest, starting to look like actually worth the money. Enzo, I'm not personally completely sold on yet, but I would rather us spend 30-40 million pound on these gems with potential. Lavia, not had many minutes. He looks like an absolute baller. We've seen it, Cole Palmer for 40 mil. Willian Esteban, by the way, not kicked a ball in a Chelsea shirt yet, but he is going to be potentially one of the new up-and-coming players in the world. I think we could already... He's not kicked a ball in a Chelsea shirt, and I genuinely believe we could probably double our investment on him. He is getting that much hype and that much praise. So
I think what you're saying here, though, Jordan, is sort of like the ceiling for Chelsea could be absolutely massive because you've got all these young players and they look pretty good now, which means they've got such high ceilings of, like you mentioned, of that sort of player there. He's not kicked a ball in a Chelsea shirt, but you're like, oh, he's going to be one of the top prospects. It's just more how many of them actually work out, how many of them flop, and that's kind of you don't know. There's not a question that you can give me like the answer, but that's the risk that this project I think brings to it, which gives you some excitement because your ceiling can be so high, but it could also be a massive waste of time because in 5 years it could be that 2 of the players actually work out, the rest are flops. You just don't know. I know I'll sound negative into this, but I kind of want to give sort of that kind of argument of it doesn't just because the ceiling's high doesn't mean it's actually going to work out.
No, yeah, you've got to look at the downside, and the downside could be we sit here in 5 years' time, we've spent close to 2 billion, and we've won nothing. So there is a big risk to that. But I appreciate they've not spent the same money. I'd slightly compare it to Arsenal, where Arsenal are now. As we've said, they've had an absolute horrible time for the last decade. Arteta's come in, changed the way they're playing. They're competing for trophies. Admittedly, not really won anything major. I know there's an FA Cup in there. But if you ask any Arsenal fan now, are they happy with where they're at? I think most would say yes. I've never seen so many Arsenal fans, Arsenal T-shirts in the street. Suddenly everyone's proud to be an Arsenal fan again. And it's true. And people are loving being an Arsenal fan again. That's the bottom line. So, I don't know. Maybe there is an argument to say if it's 2-3 years, we're competing for trophies, but we haven't won anything. Would every Chelsea fan be happier? Maybe. So I don't know. I think there's a lot more optimism now, even though it's way, way too early to even see or remotely say it's been a success.
Yeah. Okay. So I think a good question to end it on is, when will Chelsea next win the Premier League? Give me sort of a time frame of it. Obviously, not exact, but when do you think they, or at least competing? I guess I'd say give me like one when you think they could be competing. I think that's probably a better argument for it.
I'll be able to give you a better answer after the next 4 games, but I would say 3 years, assuming we keep improving and assuming Maresca stays and we, a bit like Arteta at Arsenal, I think in 3 years we can realistically start to push for the title.
Reece, when do you think Chelsea might be able to?
Oh, that's a very good question. I mean, technically they're competing now, at least. I think it will require a bit of a capitulation or very big inconsistent seasons from the 3 favourites in order to be there, or at least the fourth place is often the most exciting battle, so shoehorning in there. If you think of the future of Pep, you think of might not work out for Liverpool because it is still a project and they've got a few players out of contract at the end of the summer. That's 2 opportunities there to take advantage for them. So I would probably agree with Jordan. You're probably looking at 3 years or so. But yeah, it can't be much longer than that. If they've not won anything, if they win a couple of trophies in between, fine, make it longer. But they have to win something, maybe even at least a League Cup in that time, in that 3-year period before.
Yeah, fair enough. I think actually a bit longer because I just don't see the drop off even with Pep leaving, Liverpool will rebuild. United will probably be better than what they are now. They'll spend money at it and won't go for the young approach, so they'll try and compete straight away. I think it'll be about 5 years before I'm sort of going Chelsea can win the title. I don't see it this year with what Ree said. You need 3 teams to absolutely flop. So yeah, so 5 might be a bit of a long stretch. A lot can happen. But I think that's probably more realistic just based off the ages, really. That's when every one of them players should be in their prime-ish.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'll go.
There you go. Well, we're optimistic. Or, well, some of us are optimistic, I should say. We've had our say, but now we want to hear from you guys. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.